Hello everyone and welcome to this talk on AI and free software in the European Union. In the next 20-25 minutes, I will tell you more about why free software plays such an important role when we talk about AI and what happens at the moment in the European Union, as there are some lawmaking processes on the way. My name is Alexander Sander. I'm Senior Policy Consultant at the Free Software Foundation Europe, and we are a charity that empowers users to control technology. And part of our activity then is also to make sure that we can control AI. So this is a very important topic for us at the moment. And as said, there's lawmaking on the way, and we are trying to influence this process to make sure that free software plays a role. And for sure, we have some demands. If you talk about AI and free software, first of all, we define, or for us, it is important that AI must respect fundamental rights. So this also means that AI needs to be transparent, it needs to be fair, and it needs to be accessible, because this helps us to make sure that we can respect fundamental rights. But it also helps us in other terms, which I will tell you in a minute. And also we want to make sure that AI helps us and not discriminate us. So we see chances of AI. We see that AI might help us to modernize our digital infrastructure, but we also see the risks when we, for example, talk about discrimination, fundamental rights, and so on. And therefore, we came up with these demands. And therefore, in order to make sure that we can have AI that respects fundamental rights, that is fair, that is making sure that we don't discriminate, but rather that it helps us, we do believe that we need the use of free software in AI. So the more free software we have in AI, the more we can make sure that it respects our rights, that it respects fundamental rights. But there are also other good reasons beside of the protecting of rights part, and this is about markets. And we also do believe that we want to modernize our digital infrastructure, and this is done by innovation. And it helps us if we have free software when we talk about innovation, because then we don't have to reinvent the wheel over and over again. So with the help of free software, we can build on what's already out there. We can make sure that we can see and understand what others did so far, and by thus we can build on top and also then share this again with others. And this helps to foster innovation. Also, we can not only share expertise, but we can also share costs and collaboration projects. And by thus, we do believe that if we use free software, not only in AI, but also in AI, that we can foster innovation here. And we have seen in the past, particularly when we, for example, talk about the corona tracing apps, a thing which was all over Europe, that it helps if we have transparency, if we can modify, even if it, for example, just comes to translation or something like this, that this transparency helps us not only to guarantee trust, but also to make sure that there's innovation. So we do believe that, free software helps us on the one hand to protect fundamental rights, but also on the other hand to foster the market. So I've already pointed to some freedoms that free software guarantees you, and to make sure that we are all aware of what we are talking here about here, I would just quickly go again through the four freedoms of free software. So whenever we talk about free software, we are talking about four freedoms, and it's the freedom to use, to study, to share, and to improve. So this means we are free to use the software for any purpose without any restrictions. So we can take the software and we can do whatever we want to do with the software. So there are no limitations here. Also, I already mentioned quite often the freedom of transparency. So we are free to study the code because the code is transparent. And this means the software and the code can be analyzed by anyone. And this helps us, for example, to protect fundamental rights, right? Because if we can see what the software is doing, then we can also see if it is protecting fundamental rights, or if there are maybe some issues in the code which needs to be fixed in order to make sure that fundamental rights are protected. And as said, it's open to everyone, so anyone can read and study the code, and by thus millions of people have the potential right to study and analyze the code. And as we have seen, for example, with the corona tracing apps, there are many who do this and who want to make sure that our fundamental rights are protected. Also, the third freedom to share helps us a lot because there are, again, no limitations. You can share your software without any limitations. Also, the price doesn't matter. That doesn't mean that you can't earn money with free software. So you can earn money with free software. You can sell your products. However, you're also free to give it away for free. So you can have a business model for your free software, but it could be also a community project which comes with no costs. For sure, you will never ever pay license fees if you are using free software. So because the license is to use, study, share, and improve. And there we are at the fourth freedom to improve the software. So you can also modify it. So you are free to take the code of the software, to build on what's already out there, or to modify it to make sure that it, for example, protects then fundamental rights. And by thus, also, as we have the other three freedoms, this also means you are contributing back to the community, and by thus you don't have to reinvent the wheel over and over again. And this helps, for example, then with innovation. So we see when we have these four freedoms, use, study, share, and improve, this helps us a lot to, on the one hand, protect rights, and on the other hand, to foster innovation in the market. So, and now let's have a look on what's happening at the EU at the moment. So do they understand that free software is good for AI? And if so, where are we now? What lies ahead of us? What's the process? But also, what are the different, let's say, opinions in the European Union on this at the moment? So I guess you might be familiar with the information that there is AI regulation on its way. So the European Commission proposed a regulation in order to regulate AI in the European Union. It is also called the AI Act. So far, the situation is that we are discussing in the European Parliament and the Council this proposal of the European Commission. In the proposal of the European Commission itself, we don't have any clear reference to the use of free software. So they talk a lot about trust. They talk a lot about innovation, protecting fundamental rights, and so on. But there is no clear saying that we need the four freedoms in order to make sure to guarantee that fundamental rights are protected, for example. So they have just like these buzzwords in the regulation, on the draft regulation. And now it's on the European Parliament, but also on the Council, which means the member states of the European Union, to modify this document and to make sure that we will have a good regulation in the end. So what happened so far in the European Parliament is that before the European Commission presented its proposal on the regulation of AI, they started to work on a dedicated committee, so the AI committee in the European Parliament, to think about what is important when we talk about AI. And it took them 2 years to make hearings, to talk to experts, to stakeholders, researchers, so on. And then they finally came up with a resolution. So this is not a legal text, but this is somehow a position of the European Parliament, how they want to regulate AI. And here we have a very strong saying on public money, public code for AI. So the European Parliament demands that whenever possible, so that's the limitation here, but whenever possible, they want to see that public bodies, administrations, and so on, that they procure or if they program it by themselves, release software under a free software license. So this is a very good idea, a very strong saying here. I think in this resolution of the European Parliament, it found a huge majority back in the days. So nearly all of them voted in favor. Just a few far-right parties voted against this saying. So we have a strong saying in this resolution that especially public bodies, administrations should go in the direction and procure or release software under a free software license. Also, there's a reference to the open source strategy of the European Commission in this document. So the Commission released some years ago a strategy. It is full of loopholes. You will also find a detailed analysis and some interviews on this on our website, fsfe.org. And but in the end, there is at least a strategy. So and they say and see the advantages of free software when it comes to public bodies and administrations. So the European Commission want that the European Commission is procuring more free software, and that whenever they program something by themselves, release it under a free software license. As said, the document is full of loopholes, but still better than nothing. And also the European Parliament understood that this might be a good idea, especially when it comes to public bodies, that if we use public money, it should be public code, so free software in the end. And also what was very important for us is that they also see that it's good for the markets. So not only for public bodies, but also for private sector, it is important that we have free software. So they say whenever we use free software, then this is also good for innovation. So we see the arguments I showed you in the very beginning that are important for us are more or less reflected in this resolution here of the European Parliament. And hopefully this will help us in the upcoming debate to remind them about their own position and to bring in this good thoughts also in the regulation, or to make sure that once we have the regulation, that through delegated acts and so on, we make sure that especially public bodies procure or release under a free software license, but also that there are more and more private market players who understand that free software is also good for them. Another paper we have beside the regulation and now this resolution is the Declaration on Digital Rights. So, and this Declaration on Digital Rights also has no legal character, but it is still a declaration, so it is an important document, so it will guide us through upcoming legislations. So for example, the European Commission will use this declaration and keep it in mind whenever they propose something new when it comes to digital or where digital rights are affected. And a bit similar like with the AI regulation. In the proposal of the European Commission, there was not a very clear reference to free software when it comes to digital rights. Still, there are references to the Berlin and the Tallinn Declaration. These are two declarations which have been signed by the member states before in the last years. And there we have some very clear sayings on the use of free software. So we have it in this declaration on the digital rights as a reference to these both documents. Still, what we want to see is also then in this declaration a clear saying on the use of free software and the advantages of free software when it comes to digital rights. And here the European Parliament also follows us. So we did intense lobbying in the last months in order to make sure that they hear our voice. And now the European Parliament, sorry, the European Parliament found already a majority and proposed amendments to this Declaration on Digital Rights, where they have two clear sayings at the moment to include free software, a general remark, but also, and this is very interesting and also in particular for the regulation important, they have a clear saying on the use of free software and AI. So they want to ensure transparency and trust by using free software. So they say trustworthy standards, and whenever possible, open source standards should be used when it comes to AI to ensure transparency. So they see a connection between transparency and trust, and that this is important for AI, and this could be only achieved with free software. So this is very important. So we see that the European Parliament understood at some points that free software plays an important role. Also, the European Commission with its open source strategy is going in the right direction. At the moment, we are not 100% sure what the Council thinks, though Council is the member states of the European Union, and they are still discussing this proposal. So we don't have a final position of the European Council on this. So what we can expect as next step is, first of all, on the declaration that I think in the next months there will be the Council position then, and then there will be a discussion between the three institutions, so European Commission, European Parliament, and the European Council, to agree on a final text. For sure, they want to keep it short. They want to keep it in a format that it's still a declaration, and that it could be read by everyone, and that it's not like 200 pages long. However, I think it is important to make a reference in this declaration to free software. The European Parliament wants this, and what we are trying to do at the moment is to find or to support them in finding this compromise by including these proposals by the European Parliament we've seen. And I think this discussion will keep us busy for the next months. It won't take too long, I guess, but it's a process, you never know. And as said, we still don't know what the Council will propose. However, then on the other hand, we have this regulation I mentioned. Here the idea was to come up with a final position of the European Parliament by the end of the year, in order to be available to have in Q1 next year a final text. I don't think that this will happen. The amendments in the European Parliament, so where MEPs and committees can amend and improve the text of the European Commission, have been just tabled, and there are more than 3,000 amendments. So I think it's 100 more than we had with the data protection reform, and those of you who worked on this file or followed this data protection file back in the days know how long it took to come to a compromise there. So I don't expect anything before mid next year here. I think there will be a long way on discussions for us, and we will see how we can make sure that free software plays a role in these debates. But the idea was to come up with something by the end of the year. But to be honest, I don't see it happening because, as said, you remember the data protection reform, 3,000 amendments. So there will be long fights about compromises. And therefore, it's also important that we raise our voice here. Please help us by doing so. What we did so far is to use our Public Money, Public Code campaign. I already mentioned it in the beginning. So this campaign is running for a couple of years now. It's a very successful campaign. It's an easy slogan. If it's public money, it should be public code as well. So what we want is legislation requiring that publicly financed software developed for the public sector should be made publicly available under a free software license. So, and this is then also true for AI. And we used this campaign, which was signed by more than 30,000 individuals and 200 organizations and administrations in Europe, to convince with our arguments, but also to show that there are also already, for example, on the local level, many initiatives going in this direction, that more and more public bodies are using and procuring free software, that more and more are understanding that it is a good idea, and therefore it might be also a good idea to bring this into the text of this regulation. So you can easily support us by just, if you haven't done so far, signing the Public Money, Public Code initiative. But also, if you are representing an organization, feel free to reach out to us, and we will add you here as a supporting organization. And whenever you have the chance to reach out to a decision maker, make them aware of this concept, of this campaign. It helps a lot. Normally decision makers, if they are open to it, easily understand it, that it is a good argument. As said, some administrations are following us, like the city of Barcelona or the Swedish Workers Institution. And so we also have support by administrations here, which is very good. And yeah, if you want to work particular on AI, feel free to reach out to me. You can send me email or contact me on social networks. And yeah, I'm happy to work with you on the AI file. The more voices are in the concert, the easier it gets to convince decision makers to make sure that there is free software in AI. With this, I want to thank you. Thank you for listening. Maybe, yeah, you want to get active here. That would be awesome. Else, yeah, thanks for joining me for this talk, and I wish you a very nice ongoing conference. And with this, yeah, thank you and enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye-bye.